Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Thank you. Let's move on to our public speakers, please.
Good morning, and welcome to our committee meeting public comment session. Today we'll hear from public speakers both remotely and in person, and we have roughly 25 speakers, members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we will limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker will be David Kupferberg, followed by Christine Bruno. Okay, we'll come back to David. Our next speaker will be Christine Bruno.
Hi, I'm Christine Bruno. Thank you for having me. I'm zooming in today to talk about the proposed changes to the Access-a-Ride pilot program. I'd like to say that I am a wheelchair user. I live in Manhattan. I've been on the TPP since its inception. I am on a fixed income as well as a freelance gig worker. This program has improved my quality of life exponentially. While I appreciate and agree with adding 1,200 riders to the programs, the proposed changes will be disastrous to riders' quality of life and finances. Allowing 25 trips per month will, for someone who works full time, that is not even 2 weeks of work, and that does not allow for doctor's appointments or entertainment or any quality of life that any New Yorker enjoys. And I also don't understand why the fare is now $4 to ride when the subway fare and the bus fare is $2.75. I thought the point of the program was that disabled riders are to pay the same as non-disabled riders throughout New York City. And the table to me that we received in the email just seems ridiculous. It will be financially unsustainable for disabled riders. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your responses.
Thank you for your remarks. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. We'll go back to David Kupferberg, followed by Michael Ring. Okay, we will go to Michael Ring, and then we'll come back to David Kupferberg.
Hiya, my name is Michael Ring. I'm wearing a green shirt and a green hat. It says Disabled in Action on my hat. That's the organization I'm representing today. I'd like to talk about the end of phase 1 of the Access-a-Ride on Demand program. From what I understand, well, I've been in the program. I'm one of the people who was lucky, well, not lucky enough to get into it. I was put into it because I asked to be in it, and a lot of other people were asked to be in it, and we got in it. It wasn't random. But I understand no data was collected on how useful it was, on no information. No one asked me any questions about it. It helped people go to work. If you would survey the people who've been in it, it allowed people to go to work. I have a friend that lives in Western Rockaway and works in the Bronx, and he's able to go to work this way. If it was for regular Access-a-Ride, he would have to add an hour and a half on each end of his travel to deal with the fact that Access-a-Ride is a half hour late is still considered on time, and he might be given a tour of New York City on his way to work. With the on-demand program, he's able to go home at the end of his workday. He's able to leave when he needs to leave his house. I hope, I mean, it seems like a boulder rolling down the hill that phase 1 is going to end and phase 2 is going to start. Phase 2 won't help him. It would mean he might lose his job, he might not be able to get to work, or he'd have to deal with 4 extra hours of transportation every day. I'm wishing some data was collected. I'm hoping maybe we can slow the roll a little and collect some data on how useful the program has been, because it's allowed people with disabilities to be productive tax-paying New Yorkers, which is what we all want to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jack Nierenberg, followed by John Padula. Okay, we'll come back to Jack.
Right here.
Oops, sorry.
Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jack Nierenberg. I'm the Vice President of Passengers United. And I want to talk about 2 very important points. First of all, Fordham Road already has a bus lane. It's had a bus lane for the past decade or so, or well over a decade. And unfortunately, it's not enforced, so it's not effective as a bus lane. So while we do not support the plan to convert Fordham Road, an essential arterial road for the Bronx, into a busway completely, because it's going to do a lot of damage to the surrounding areas, we do believe that a redesign of Fordham Road is necessary to make sure that all traffic can function properly on Fordham Road, including and especially bus traffic. So we're going to be speaking to elected officials and in the Bronx, and hopefully people from the DOT as well about that. And second of all, I do want to express more concerns about congestion pricing, especially considering that the subways and the buses are not designed to handle the overflow crowds. Once congestion pricing goes through, it's going to create hazardous situations onboard trains, onboard buses, and especially considering buses are being cut. They were cut in the Bronx as part of the redesigns over there. They're being cut in Queens and Brooklyn, and we saw that in Staten Island too. And people with disabilities, people with those who are senior citizens as well, have been suffering as a result. We've been seeing the same thing with the Access-a-Ride with an earlier speaker who has been, they've been suffering, and we're going to hear probably more speakers from Access-a-Ride who have been suffering as well. So it's really unfair, and I just wanted to bring that point up, that if we're going to have congestion pricing, there needs to be an adequate increase in service in transit. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Gian Padula, followed by David Kupferberg over Zoom.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Padula, and I'm from New York City Public Schools, as well as a member of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility. Given the impending doom of the life-limiting changes for Phase 2, I've gone back to using traditional Access-a-Ride. And what some of the able-bodied bean counters from finance don't understand is that I still have a life to live. And to live that life, if it means that I'm going to use the same traditional trips as I did on-demand trips, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to figure it out. So to acclimate myself to those realities, I've gone back to using traditional service. And I'm costing you guys more money. These prices are ridiculous. The only organization in New York City that spends as much money as Access-a-Ride for no results are the Mets. You guys both love overpaying and overspending for wildly, wildly underwhelming results. Mr. Davies, with all due respect, I can't tell you how offensive it is to hear you say that our Phase 2 is in line with the rest of the country. How can you make that argument? To the best of my research, our geographic area is 320 miles squared. The only thing that competes is Chicago at 231 square miles. Tell me why Chicago offers 8 trips a day at a $30 subsidy. We offer 25. So an agency that's got 25 or 28% smaller is offering a subsidy that's 20% higher. How does that make sense? We need a fair fare for a fair ride that gives us access to the 5 boroughs. We should be entitled to move about this city as freely, as spontaneously, with some sort of decent respect and autonomy like any other person. Enough is enough. And don't give me the crock that you're in line with everyone else. You're not. Look at Vegas, look at Denver. Do your research, man. I know you're smart, you're intelligent. Don't think I'm an idiot.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be David Kupferberg over Zoom, followed by Charlton D'Souza.
NYCT will be changing bus schedules for fall 2023 on September 3rd, the first schedule changes since the beginning of the pandemic. A summary of those changes should have been in the committee agenda as an information item for this month's meeting. They are not. The schedule changes are based on the MTA Transit Service Guidelines Manual adopted in 2010 when high-floor vehicles dominated the fleet. They are no longer in revenue service. It's time to change the manual in order for mass transit to proactively compete with the automobile and ride-sharing services, a concept that a significant number of service planners have no clue. These changes and future changes should also be posted in advance on the MTA website. NYCT should also reveal the 4 other bus routes besides the B60 to the committee as part of a PowerPoint presentation participating in the FAIR pilot project for 6 to 12 months. The slide should have also been in the agenda packets. For congestion pricing, the MTA to this day has refused to mention the additional service they will provide. And if a bus trip should be canceled, it should be noted in real time in bus time. In summary, the MTA and its subsidiaries still have a long way to go in order to prove they are transparent. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Charlton D'Souza, followed by Jocelyn Smith.
Good morning, Charlton D'Souza, President of Passengers United. And today you guys are going to be voting on the fare increase. So the base fare should be kept at $275. There should be a one-day Omni Unlimited, a one-day day pass for the tourists and for the visitors. And really, the 7-day pass, there really shouldn't be a fare increase, guys. I mean, you have all this money. People are suffering right now to put food on the table. Student loan payments are about to start in about a month or 2. And so people cannot afford fare increase right now. But I want to go back to something. So a lot of bus trips throughout the city are being canceled, and there's no notification on empty bus time. When the bus command center knows the trip is canceled, there are many times I've had to call the bus command center to ask them, why is the trip canceled? What's going on? There's no notification. Sometimes you're waiting for a bus 45 minutes and nothing, especially overnight. They have to improve on this. And also overnight, they have to improve on connections. I'm very, very concerned that the congestion pricing that's going to be implemented, service is going to be a disaster. You're going to have millions and millions of people coming into the subway system, and the system is breaking down with the new signal system. What is the MTA's plan? Have any new bus routes been implemented as part of the congestion pricing plan that you guys have on the drawing board? Y'all need to show this to the public, because what's going to happen is Uber and Lyft is going to have a monopoly over the city, and surge pricing is going to go out of control. So I'm fearful that the elected officials have set up a plan of disaster for New York City. And as it is, people are taking Ubers and Lyfts when the subway breaks down. There's also a condition been going on at 27th Street over there on 7th Avenue. They're selling drugs in the train station. That needs to be cleaned up immediately. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Jocelyn Smith, followed by Christopher Greif.
Good morning. I am Jocelyn Smith of Mobilization for Justice, which works with people who are low-income, disenfranchised, who have disabilities as they struggle to overcome the effects of social injustice and systemic racism. Accessoride's eHail pilot program has been a step in that direction. It has been a game changer for people with disabilities, allowing the same sort of flexibility in making travel plans that other riders enjoy. However, the MTA's plan for Phase 2 will make this program ineffective and out of reach for many New Yorkers. In fact, it seems as if there has been little thought to any New Yorkers who travel outside of their immediate neighborhoods, and certainly not to residents of the outer boroughs who need to travel to Manhattan, which is the new employment, higher education, medical, political, and recreational nucleus of our city. Examine the district office addresses from a sample of local politicians to see whether it is possible to get to Manhattan for $40 or less from all parts of the city. All costs were computed on Uber on July 13th and 14th during daytime hours, with this address, 2 Broadway, as the destination. From the office of State Senator Leroy Comrie in Queens, $78.98. From the office of State Senator Roxanne Persaud in Brooklyn, $54.93. From the office of Assemblyman Jeff Dinowitz in the Bronx, $65.96. And this is not an anomaly. Further review of potential Uber trips from 65 Assembly offices throughout the city showed that trips from 52 Assembly members' offices to 2 Broadway cost over $40. This is a figure of 80%. It's worth asking for whom Phase 2 was developed. Was it only developed for residents of Lower Manhattan, Midtown, and the closest parts of the outer boroughs? This raises troubling issues of racism and classism as not traditional of transit in New York City, which in my lifetime has charged the same rate to someone who wants to ride from Midtown to the Upper East Side as it charges to someone who wants to ride from Midtown to Far Rockaway. eHail is a service that offers Accessoride riders the same flexibility that other transit riders enjoy. It costs the same and should not be rationed, and riders should not be penalized based on the parts of the city in which they live. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Christopher Greif, followed by Andy Pollack over Zoom.
And good morning, everyone. Christopher D. Greif, happy Disability Pride Month, 8833. As you see, I'm not the only one with the sign. As we celebrate Disability Pride, and I don't have to say any much with all the other speakers are speaking about Accessoride and stuff. They have the right to speak. They always do a great speaking presentation, but I'm here to remind a couple of things. As we celebrate the 8833, we need to remember that train stations, buses, and Accessoride needs to be make sure it's always up to date and truly ADA accessible. As we celebrate the Disability Pride Month, as well as 8833, which is next Wednesday, we need to always remember celebrating what we accomplish and what we need to accomplish in the near future. For example, Jamaica Station, which represents the E and the J and the Long Island Railroad. The elevators that go up to the railroad and to the air train is not MTA. That is the Port Authority's elevators. If anyone has a complaint about those, please see the Port Authority on July 27th at their location in Jersey City. Second thing is if we have these complaints, and I understand we have the apps, we have the phones, let's make sure we use them. But we'll also need to make sure that a respond time can always please get back. And I know we do get that back as soon as possible, and make sure communication, which we always do. But we need to make clear that the disabilities, for all disabilities who are here or out there in the TV land, Please remember, celebrate 8833 for Disability Pride Month, and let's make sure we continue advocating. Thank you, MTA. Thank you, System-Wide Accessibility. Thank you, Q. And thank to the NYPD and the MTA Police. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Andy Pollack, followed by Alita Dupree.
Thank you, David. Good morning, Richard, and good morning, everyone. Andy Pollack here from Passengers United. So I want to get into a couple of things before the end of the summer here. Number one, yet again, subway surfing has claimed 2 lives in the past month. And I would hope that in the upcoming 2023-24 school year, I'm hoping that we can get members of the transit police to educate children on the dangers of subway surfing, because I've gone on the record and said, lives are being lost, but, time and money are also on the line as well, because they always say time is money in New York City. So I just want to state that for the record, that something needs to be done to educate our youth about subway surfing. And then we have to educate the people of the dangers of putting trash on the subway tracks. And I've seen a lot of it in the past month, especially at 42nd Street, Bryant Park on the B, D, F, and M line. Not only is it disgusting, but from what I've been made aware of in our organization, Passengers United, we've been well aware of the smoke conditions being reported throughout the subway system. And that's what leads to track fires, and that's what leads to delays. So what I'm calling for is the MTA to bring back the Darth Vader machine. It was a machine that swept up the trash off the subway tracks. And listen, you have trash. Please just throw it out in the trash receptacle, or wait till you get upstairs and find a trash can, or just take care of it responsibly, because we can't be having any more of these smoke conditions inside subway tunnels anymore. It's getting way out of hand. So with that being all said, Richard, enjoy the rest of your summer, and I will speak to you in the fall.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Alita Dupree, followed by Murray Bowden.
Thank you. Good morning to the chair. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her. First of all, I was reading through the minutes of the last meeting. And while I did speak at that meeting by audio at about 41 minutes into the meeting, my name is not showing in the list of public speakers in the recorded minutes shown in your agenda. So we need to correct that. Thank you. I keep saying it. I hope to be back on the system soon. I know that there's a lot of issues with smoke from wildfires to the north. And that's concerning to me. And being in California, especially in Northern California, there's fire risk of that really every year. And fares are complicated. I'll be seeing what you're going to do with that today. Nobody likes a fare increase. I don't really like a fare increase, but maybe it's something that we just have to do. And continuing on with our Omni work, one of the reasons why I hope to get to New York soon is to use Omni with the reduced fare configuration that I have set up. Lots of people are using it, but I don't hear at meetings around the country people talking about that. So I wanted to highlight that for you. And I hope we will announce more ADA stations. Keep working on that. At BART, I really don't think about it because all the stations are accessible, except when an elevator isn't working. So we have a lot to do over this summer. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Murray Bowden, followed by Jason Anthony.
Sometimes we try to solve problems without going back to the basics. People aren't paying attention anymore, and people are aggressive. How do you stop some of it? The lines on the road that you're using were designed 50 years ago for a system that's long gone past. They were designed speeds to half this. And until you go back and you make the lines consistent and the way you drive, you're slowing everybody down. You got buses now with looking where people are and lines on the road. The line on the left has to be yellow all the time. It was designed with a white on both sides when Robert Moses first started. That's how far back it goes. So until you go back and solve a basic problem, you're going to have all kinds of trouble. Aggressive drivers, don't pay attention. On the Kosciuszko Bridge, there's a sign there that has 4 arrows on it. They point up, and they're narrow, and they're consistent with the rest of the world. We use fancy arrows with designs. Can't be made by a line striper. So the first thing you go out there and look is, where does the driver actually drive? No driver goes like this. So until you make it clear and consistent, you got somebody on this, works here, taught me that, Kathy Sheridan. Consistency is safety. And until you go back and solve the basic problems of the lines on the road and the signs up there, you got problems.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jason Anthony, followed by Tashia Lyrabors.
Good morning, Hayden. Good morning, Reg. And good morning to the rest of the Transit Committee. Today we have the announcement of the new NYPD Commissioner, who is from the Bronx and Puerto Rican. I hope that the transit officials could pay attention to him, and especially those who are not present, like Michael Kemper, that should be paying attention and having discussions from transit advocates like myself, because he has been annoying us since he has been being the transit head. It's like having Catherine O'Reilly 2.0. But let's remind everyone that July is 8833, and like our brothers and sisters in the disability community, that they're in a transition to the eHealth pilot 2. And let's remind Chris that not everybody is not benefiting from the eHealth pilot 2, and not, let's say everybody's going to be disenfranchised from this eHealth program. So Chris, please reconsider that. And regarding my commute to and from work, Frank, I had to submit a complaint regarding the S40 because the other day I got stranded twice this week. So I had to submit a complaint log to the website. And since that Amazon submitted MAT for next week, Julie, please reconsider adjustment for the S40 for next week, because commuters have been stranded for Staten Island. So that's all I have to say for this month. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Tashia Lyrabors, followed by Yolanda Elaine.
Good morning. My name is Tasha Lyrabors. I work for Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York. I'm here once again to talk about the On-Demand Phase 2. As was mentioned, this month is the ADA 33. And Access-a-Right's been around since the 90s, and it is the year 2023. And unfortunately, instead of the progress that paratransit should have by now, instead of taking a step forward, unfortunately, we're taking a step back. By limiting the number of rides for consumers and increasing the price, as I said, you're taking a step backwards. we have a long way to go. A lot of the issues with the blue and white service itself, along with broker, and now the situation, the plans for on-demand phase 2. You know, as I said last month, something I would suggest is for all of you guys to experience the service, both with regular Access-a-Ride and with phase 2, because it's not fair to on-demand users. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Yolanda Elaine, followed by Kara Leibowitz.
Good morning. My name is Yolanda Lean. The new segment of the e-hail program and a Stress-a-Ride, as is known on the street, the program you stated, if you live in Brooklyn to come to Manhattan, there's no way it's a $40 fare. And with base that I got from you guys, my ride be costing me $52 round trip. Where do Stress-a-Ride users get that amount of money when most of them are on disability or on seniors or on fixed income? New York City Transit, the governor was here, rah-rah, in May, and everybody, she said, I keeping the fare for $2.90. Stress-a-Ride users can't afford to pay that $4 and that $25 a month increase. New York City Transit don't have that for the rest of the New Yorkers. Why should Stress-a-Ride user have that? We need a quality of life just like all of you guys that walk on your feet. All the board members that sit here month after month. No one has ever addressed Stress-a-Ride. Absolutely none. Every month, or every one of these wheelchairs complain that they need to get on the subway just like everybody else. I would love to get on the subway myself. Unfortunately, I don't have that luxury. So guess what? I am stuck with Stress-a-Ride, and no one gives me the dignity nor respect that any of you guys get. It's ridiculous Stress-a-Ride users have to be punished because they're not able to use New York transit system regularly. That's ridiculous. Give us the same dignity and respect like all you guys have. Every month, people come and complain about it, and for years, and that system is the only one have not improved in all the years that people have been using it. Everybody give all these accolades, but it's not true. Speak to the people that actually use the system.
Please conclude your remarks.
Try it.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Kara Leibowitz, followed by Jessica Shea.
Good morning. My name is Kara Leibowitz. I'm the Advocacy Coordinator at the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled, and I'm here today to talk again about Phase 2 of the Access-a-Ride e-hail on-demand program. I can only conclude that the staff at the MTA who put together this proposal either have no concept of how much it truly costs to get around the city, or are deliberately sabotaging the program, or maybe both. Very few trips are going to cost under $40, and even fewer are going to cost under $25. This is not even taking into account the initial fare, which the MTA so generously lowered to $4 from the initial proposal of $5. The only trips that even have a chance at meeting the threshold are short trips within the same borough. People who want to travel to other boroughs, especially those who live in out-of-the-way areas, are going to be forced to pay more for trips that on regular Access-a-Ride or fixed-route transit would only cost $2.75. In order to qualify for Access-a-Ride, you have to demonstrate that you are unable to use fixed-route transit at least part of the time. Because of that, we're relegated to paratransit service that forces us to schedule the day before and set aside large chunks of the day because we have no idea when Access-a-Ride is going to show up or how many pickup and drop-offs they have before us. Now we're being offered the same spontaneous travel that non-paratransit customers enjoy, but it comes at an additional cost. To add insult to injury, we are limited in the number of rides we can take, a limit that no other population of people faces. It feels like we are being punished for being unable to use the fixed route transit system, a system that many more people would be able to use if elevators were installed at all subway stations and properly maintained, and other accessibility improvements, such as reducing the gap between the train and the platform, were implemented. The MTA can go back to the drawing board and design an on-demand program that is truly equitable for all. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jessica Shea, followed by Michael Ortiz over Zoom.
Good morning, ladies. Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I, myself, have not been privy to the e-health program. However, I think it's a very good program. How many of you like to go out for drinks on a Friday night, on a Thursday night, and you need to go to a bar, and then you're going home on Uber? As a fixed income professional, you are not able to travel at a fixed trip time. If you look at the 25 or the 40 trips a month, that means that 5 days a week, 2 trips. What happens on weekends? What happens when you go out? What happens to the social life? Everybody talks about the quality of life. I advise you guys, like previous speakers, take Accessorize, go undercover, and see how it is. Obviously, if you guys show up the way your name is gonna show up, they're gonna see, oh, you are the board members and you are people to service inequality. But go under, put on a hat, be in a wheelchair for a day, go out on the subways. Today I traveled on the subway. I got pushed and pulled everywhere I needed to go, and I couldn't get on elevators. Luckily, right now, between 6 months ago and now, there's now platform controllers that will help me get on. But on the subway, I have to move people around because I'm afraid that the door will close if I'm on the other side of the door. There's no indicators of which side the doors are opening on the subway. But the e-health program would generously benefit me and the better. So I'm hoping phase 2 will increase riders without decreasing the rider amount. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Michael Ortiz, followed by Robert Weeks.
Hello, good morning, everyone. First thing I want to say is that, of course, subway surfing is out of control yet again. One thing I can definitely say to solve this issue is that the 2023 to 2024 school year is fast approaching. And what we can be doing is have transit police or whatever people from the MTA come into the schools and educate the youth of the dangers of subway surfing. The next thing I want to talk about is, of course, the Second Avenue subway phase 2 reconstruction. That is something really going to be that's going to be a game changer to the public, as extending the queue from 96 all the way to 125th. This would reduce the amount of overcrowding on Lexington. The next thing we want to discuss is, of course, Brooklyn bus redesign ideas. There has been a draft, but instead of having the B55 go to JFK, we had the B35 do it, as it would be a better way to carry more riders. And the next thing, of course, is CBTC on Culver. Thank you for bringing the shuttle buses toward the F train riders, because there have been people getting ripped off by taxis, Ubers, and Lyfts for those living along F train stations. So, yeah, that's a good help, and it could have been done in the beginning, but it's better now than never. The next thing I want to discuss is, of course, the 7-line shutdown of, the renovations between the stations. The stations need renovations. And lastly, the Rockaway shutdowns of the A line with the bridge. That needs to be looked at and studied. That's going to be it. And hopefully you all have a great summer, and I hope to see you all again in the fall.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Robert Weeks, followed by Jean Ryan.
Hello everyone. My name is Robert Weeks. I am from the American Council for the Blind. I have a problem with these buses, like on 7th Avenue. There's 2 different buses running, and I cannot tell you which one it is because I think they have the M7 and the M20. When these buses show up, when the door opens, this is supposed to say either this is the M7, what location it's going at, like what the F train do. I have a problem traveling on the B and D train because when it shows up, this says nothing. There's no announcement in the subway station saying that this is a Q train, this is a B train coming, or this is a D train coming. We lost. I know a lot of people get stray away because they don't know what train is going on. The F and M is doing a good job, but the B and D is not doing nothing with no announcement in the station. What is going on? We need help. Again, I'm from American Council for the Blind. We was to had someone from NTA to show one of our meetings at the library on 40 West 20th Street, June, on the month of May. Nobody shows up. June, nobody shows up. July, nobody shows up. What's going on? We need help. We need help. Like the M23 makes the announcement, but the M7 says nothing. The M20 says nothing. On the M7 says nothing on 6, and the M65 says nothing. There's more than one buses running on different street. We need to know which bus coming. And one more thing before I go, there's a nice machine on 3rd Avenue. I can hit that button and it can tell me when the 101 is coming. We need that. Please help us. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jean Ryan, followed by Dustin Jones.
Hi, I'm Jean Ryan, president of DIA. I get calls all the time from accessoride riders who are at the end of their ropes because they're not being picked up at all, or they can't reach the command center, they can't reach the same day trip people. They get put on hold, then the call gets disconnected before someone even picks up. So they feel like, and it's true, it's not just a feeling, they really don't get help when they're not getting picked up and they need to be picked up. And then we all have uncertainty and fear about getting stranded somewhere. So on the on-demand program in phase 2, what if we go to another borough, then we try to get back home at night and it starts raining? Well, you know, that brings on surge pricing, and what if we can't afford that trip? I mean, there's just totally unpredictability. Nothing has been said also about who's going to pay the tolls. Because, you know, we have boroughs that are surrounded by water. And when you try to go from one borough to the other, you have to cross a bridge or go in a tunnel. We've been told by accessoride officials that we can always take regular accessoride, even though it's so terrible. But about 110,000 accessoride registrants are not using accessoride because it's so bad. 110,000. About 60,000 are using accessoride. Lastly, how will accessoride save money when we take more traditional trips that cost more per ride? I guess it's different buckets of money. You are cutting a program that works for riders to one that does not work. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Dustin Jones, followed by Sean Connolly.
It's good to see I have everybody's attention. I want to thank you for that.
I'm here to talk about the eHail program. I'm here to talk about the phase 2 for this eHail program. I think it's totally unfair, and I think it's totally wrong to ask people who are traditionally on a fixed income to pay any amount of money over $40 to travel around the city. I live 20 minutes away from here, and an average ride to get here is $27 to $37. I just recently had a traumatic surgery, and I'm not even in rehab yet, and I'm traveling back and forth from Chelsea to Sunset Park. What am I supposed to tell my doctors? What am I supposed to tell people in rehab when I want to travel to get better? That the MTA says I can't because they're holding me prisoner? I heard a young lady here say she lives in Jamaica, Queens. I grew up in Queens Village. We don't even have a subway station in Queens Village to this day, yet alone to find an accessible taxi. You guys need to really reconsider what you're doing. We don't have six-figure incomes, and we don't have access to black cars the way some of you might do. You guys have no idea what it's like to live in our shoes and travel around. Have some compassion. Me personally, because I always speak for me, I don't represent anybody. I don't care about the $4. I'll pay the $4. I don't care about that. But what I do care about is anything after 40. It is totally unfair for anyone to come out of their pocket and be limited on the amount of trips that they have on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Sean Connolly, followed by Iris Kelly.
Hello. This is working. Hi, my name is Sean Connolly. I'm with New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. I'm also here to talk about the on-demand pilot. As many people have already told you today, and as many people who we work with have told us, the traditional Access Ride program is frankly just inconsistent and unreliable. But many people who have been lucky enough to be in this on-demand program have described it as life-changing and much better than the original program. It allows people to, like any other New Yorker, travel when and where they want, to make spontaneous plans because they know they'll have a consistent and reliable form of transit. And Access Ride users deserve to have transit on equal terms to any other New Yorker. An expansion of the pilot program in its current form without any caps on the number or cost of trips would help move us towards that goal. Unfortunately, the proposed changes are going to move us away from that goal. The reality is other New Yorkers don't face a quota on their use of the subways or buses, and no matter how far they want to travel on transit, the cost of the fare doesn't change. So it's just not on par with the service that's offered to the New Yorkers. And I do want to point out that it's not only a moral issue, it's to provide service on par to the New Yorkers. It's a legal one. I'm sure the board's aware of this. The Department of Justice has already flagged the current Access Ride system as violating the ADA because it fails to provide users with a system of transit comparable to fixed line service. I believe the DOJ actually quoted and said the Access Ride system is essentially so poor it discourages riders from using it. The proposed changes to the on-demand pilot, which would make it a system of rationed transit with caps on the number and cost of trips, just doesn't solve this problem. Access Ride will remain fundamentally unequal to fixed ride service. Until that changes, the system is failing on both moral and on legal grounds. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Iris Kelly, followed by Kara Girl.
Yes, my name's Iris Kelly, and my problem here is with Access Ride both ways, eHail or the other traditional. First of all, traditional, they have problems with where I say, I had a car service supposed to come get me at 12. They come 12:10, he calls me, and he says, I'll be right down. I said, I'll be right down, because in my building, I take the elevator down, get outside, he's not even there. And I tried to get in the car ride from them, and they said, they can't take me to my doctor's office. They can take me either home or to the other cafe I go to. They couldn't take me to my doctor's appointment. And then second of all, this thing with the eHail, they had a disgrace to try and put a cap on everything people to do. It was great they have this in the beginning because I can get to my sister's house on when they plan something last minute and be able to go see them. But now if you can put in a cap, I can't even do that. That is disgraceful. That's supposed to be a time we can do it on our own without having to be calling a day before to get a trip. We would be able to do it the same day to get something to be able to go to and do something. This is a disgraceful. I put more money into this, and you make a disgrace of yourselves. You try being in our shoes, see what it's like, and what do you do? You think about that one. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Kara Girl, followed by Jessica Tambor.
Good morning. I'm Kara Girl, Planning and Advocacy Manager at the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, PCAC. A few weekends into the first round of subway service improvements, we're thrilled to see what's possible with more investment from the state. The weekend frequency increases on the G, J, and M are already making a difference, and as a regular weekend G-train rider, I have noticed shorter waits. We can't wait to see the next rounds of off-peak service increases that better reflect changing commute and travel patterns. Bus service is also critical to a thriving city and region. The expansion of ABLE in this year's budget will prove to be transformative in speeding up buses around the 5 boroughs. It's clear that cars, trucks, deliveries, and other vehicles blocking buses are the single biggest obstacle slowing down bus riders. ABLE and expanded enforcement must be partnered with dedicated busways and bus lanes, including on Fordham Road. Bronxites deserve faster bus service on one of the busiest bus routes in the borough. According to DOT, buses on Fordham Road travel at an average speed of 6.3 miles per hour, and BX12 speeds have declined over the last decade since regular bus lanes were installed. At some areas, buses crawl at less than 4 miles per hour. That's slower than a chicken and many of the Bronx Zoo's animals. DOT's new watered-down proposal will not provide the speed improvements that Bronx riders need and deserve. We need to see a busway on Fordham Road. Whether you're headed to the Bronx Zoo, the Botanic Garden, or the many bus businesses nearby, transit is the best way to get there, and most people already use transit to patronize small businesses. We urge Mayor Adams and Commissioner Rodriguez to move forward with the original Fordham Road busway proposal. We also hope the city will further expand Fair Fare's eligibility in upcoming years to 200% of the federal poverty level. Expansion from 100% of the federal poverty level to 120% is a start, but it does not go far enough. We'll keep advocating until more New Yorkers in need qualify. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jessica Tambor, followed by Joseph Morales.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Tambor, and I work at Bronx Independent Living Services. The way e-hail now is important to me because I live in Whitestone, Queens, and it is very expensive to travel anywhere outside of my town. I work in the Bronx, and I go to appointments and socialize in all the other boroughs. This weekend, I got chosen for 25 rides at $40 a ride. I, like most people with disabilities, can't afford to pay for what the cabs are about to charge us. This does not cover how much I travel or the cost of each trip that my trips would cost. Also, how are we going to pay the drivers cash or card when they don't speak a lot of English? They might take advantage of us, and they're going to ask for more money than they're supposed to ask for. People without disabilities can hop on public transportation and not worry too much what time they're going to get home, and we can't do that. Without the e-hail being paid for, like it is now, I will lose some of my freedom because I won't be able to stay past the time of my program and go to dinner with my friends, and I would need a assessor ride to get me at the scheduled time that I booked the day before, and I might not be able to stay the whole program if assessor rides early. And yeah, okay.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Joseph Morales, followed by our final speaker of the day, Elizabeth Valdez.
All right, good morning, everyone. This morning I was taking a look at the key performance metrics book for today, and I realized some good news. Elevator reliability has substantially increased this year, practically in every month. This is amazing. I would have liked to see more information on how that's been the case. I know of escalators, I don't know if it's the case with elevators. A lot of times they've been hard to fix because the parts for so many escalators are different, and there's multiple different companies usually working on different escalators. So to train employees, for people to become acclimated to how these things work for escalator replacements and stuff, it's tough. So I'm just curious how we achieved such great success with the elevators and how we could build on that, especially after what you've seen today, the need for accessibility in our transit system. I also noticed that our counts for subway fires have fluctuated. We all are familiar with the announcement, don't throw trash in the tracks, it could cause track fires. Obviously police, it would be pretty difficult for them to stand over and patrol littering in the system. So we should really take a deep dive into what is it in the tracks that causes the fires? What could we do from an infrastructure standpoint to improve the tracks for that regard? Because like I said, we can't control everything that goes in the tracks. And what is it that we have to absolutely make sure stays out of the tracks? And take whatever measures we need to improve that, because when there's a track fire, there's a major delay, and we'd like to avoid those. My last big point for today, I'd like to mention that crime has not declined as much from January to June of this year as it did, as compared to the same time frame last year, in comparison to the first 10 weeks of both years. Cops Cameras Care is continuing. It has achieved some success. I saw Chief Kemper on the NYPD show True Blue that's on YouTube, showing what they do in the system. But why hasn't it worked as big as it did the first 10 weeks, and how could we build on success is going to be really important. Thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you for your remarks. Our final speaker today will be Elizabeth Valdez.
My name is Elizabeth Valdez, and I am the Systems Advocate for BCID. The on-demand program has given me unlimited freedom when it comes to traveling, like going to appointments or going to work, or if my boss asks me to attend an event at the last minute. As a person with a disability, it is important to be able to move around independently, accompanied with affordability. People that reside in the outer boroughs will suffer the most because of the associated increased price changes. And it is well known that the majority of people that are disabled are of low income. The only flexibility to this program is that you can call for transportation on demand. However, these new changes will hurt the very people that it was intended to help, and I urge you to keep the services as is.
Thank you for your remarks. That concludes our public comment session.
Thank you to all our speakers. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 2023 meeting. Second? All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute. Andrew, we have a correction?
Yes, there's a correction on page 43. Chris Greif's name is misspelled. It should be Greif. No T at the end.
Got it. Okay. So can I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended? Motion second. David, okay. All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. Rich, do we have any changes to the work plan?
We don't, but I do want to note that the financial reports will be distributed through the director's desk and posted on the website before the end of the month, because this meeting was earlier than usual, 1 week earlier. Their financial reports we usually don't close out until later in the month. So those are coming for those who are looking for it.
Okay, so now I think we're going to go out of order and have Chief Kempler make his report.
That's right. There was a question earlier about Chief Kemper's whereabouts. I want to note that he has been on hold for an hour after attending the new commissioner's announcement earlier this morning. So, Chief, thank you very much for hanging in there with us. And I know you had some important remarks. So the chair and I wanted you to go first. So, please.
Are you still in the Bronx, Chief?
Thank you. Could you hear me?
Yes.
I just left the Bronx. I'm actually in Manhattan right now. But first of all, good afternoon, Chair Mahalsis and President Davey and members of the board, and President Davey and Chair. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak via Zoom today. I physically could not be there. As mentioned, I just left the Bronx, where the mayor announced a new police commissioner just a short while ago. Police Commissioner Eddie Caban, who's a good man and who will no doubt do extraordinary things for New York City. And we are certainly in good hands with him leading the NYPD. But as I've repeatedly stated, it's an honor for me to hold this position as the NYPD Chief of Transit and to be able to work alongside and represent the greatest cops in the world. It's also an honor to work alongside amazing people and great partners at the MTA in our daily 24/7 efforts in securing the New York City subway system, an iconic, world-renowned subway system that is truly the lifeblood of our city. Each day, millions of riders depend upon and use our subway system as a means of transport, a means to transport them to work, to school, to events, to visit family members, and so much more. And as we've repeatedly stated, our riders deserve a safe experience, to be safe and to feel safe. Make no mistake about it, New York City cops remain steadfast and are committed to enforcing the law, preserving peace, protecting people, reducing fear, and maintaining order in the New York City subway system. Public safety continues to be Mayor Adams and this administration's top priority. Year to date, overall major crime is down 5% in the subway system when compared to last year. Most notably, robberies are down 14.2%. Rapes are down 43%. Felony assault is down 1.6%. And grand larceny, the crime that accounts for just under 50% of all crime in the subway system, is also down. We are averaging 6 index crimes a day this year in a system that is so expansive, so complex, and is used by upwards of 4+ million paid riders a day. Crime in the subway system this year accounts for 1.7% of all crime citywide. And when comparing overall crime this year to pre-pandemic year 2019, we are down over 6.5%. Although our crime stats are extremely important to us, and we are very encouraged by them, we recognize that we still have a lot of work to do. I want to be clear. One crime is one crime too many. No one should be victimized. And I also want to be clear. We are fully aware of the perception and fear that many New Yorkers have in relation to using the subway system. This is a very real concern to many people, and this is a challenge we are facing and working hard to combat. Our strong uniform presence throughout the entire city, in every neighborhood, with the train station, on every train line remains intact, with cops assigned to train patrols, platforms, mezzanines, and turnstiles. In addition, your cops are working very hard this year, with enforcement efforts in the subway system up dramatically this year. For example, this year, overall arrests in the subway system are up 52.4%. This 52+% increase represents 2,410 more arrests this year versus last year. Every borough and every district encompassing every neighborhood is showing increases. This holds true with tab summonses and criminal court summonses as well, with tab summonses up over 57% this year and criminal court summonses up 61% this year. In large part, those are the summonses issued for the quality of life offenses that upset our riders. For example, smoking, disorderly conduct, outstretched on seats, urinating, etc. A key component to our overall strategy is our increased presence at turnstiles, the first and last place a rider passes when entering and exiting a subway station, an area where the tone of law and order in our system begins and ends. Cops are assigned to turnstiles in every district, in every neighborhood with a subway station throughout the entire city. Their presence carries value in deterring crime, providing our riders a sense of security and a feeling of safety, medical assistance if needed, directions, and it ensures our riders enter the system properly, legally. Our presence at turnstiles also helps to deter unlawful and criminal activity and leads to the recovery of illegally possessed weapons and people with active warrants for their arrest. This year alone, at the turnstiles, through fare evasion enforcement, we have recovered over 200 illegally possessed dangerous weapons, stopping them from entering our system and potentially inflicting harm to our riders. This includes over 175 knives and 13 loaded firearms. Again, all from fare evasion enforcement. Additionally, well over 40% of the individuals arrested for fare evasion this year possessed active warrants for their arrest. This includes people being actively sought for murder, robbery, felony assaults, weapons possessions, and other serious crimes. Our presence at turnstiles and our fare evasion enforcement is about addressing disorder, lawlessness, and behavior that weighs heavily on a rider's sense of security and safety. Riders should not walk into a station with the expectation of a free or unlawful ride. And absent exigent circumstances or unforeseen necessity, officers assigned to the turnstiles have been instructed and re-instructed to reinforce this very notion. Before I close, I would like to again take this opportunity to discuss the dangers associated with subway surfing, and I'll plead to anyone who is thinking of doing it. Our message is clear: don't do it. And, you know, I was paying close attention to the public speakers, and at least a couple of them brought up this very matter. Not only is subway surfing illegal, and you will be arrested if caught doing it, but it is extremely reckless and dangerous. People, mostly young teenagers, are senselessly being seriously injured, and some are literally losing their lives. From January to present, we've recorded 6 incidents of subway surfing that resulted in tragic outcomes, including 4 teenagers who lost their lives and 3 teenagers who suffered very serious, life-altering, debilitating injuries. The ages of the 4 teenagers who lost their lives are as follows: 16, 15, 14, and 14. Could you imagine? We are fully engaged in this matter. That I assure you. Our efforts to deter and stop subway surfing include intelligence gathering, investigations, deployment, arrests, and outreach. Our outreach includes, amongst so much more, working alongside our partners at the MTA, City Hall, other NYPD bureaus, and the Department of Education. At last month's committee meeting, I stated that we were in the process of creating a public service announcement on this very topic. Since then, this PSA was completed, has been released, and has generated media attention on this serious matter, a matter that is senseless and entirely avoidable. So to that, we again urge parents, guardians, and family members, speak to your children and family member. Explain to them the dangers associated with subway surfing. Explain to them that no amount of social media likes or attention is worth the devastation you will bring yourself and your family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. I just have a question. Yesterday, I guess I was home watching a bit of TV. And everyone's talking about pickpocketers. Do we see an uptick in pickpocketers in the system?
So as far as pickpocketing, that would fall into the category of grand larceny. Okay. We're actually down in that crime for the year, but I think I mentioned it, or I alluded to it in my opening comments. That grand larceny either consists of pickpocketing or people leaving valuables valued at over $1,000. That type of crime accounts for just under 50% of all major felony crimes in the subway system. We've had success in arresting pickpockets. Look, I mean, these people are, some of them are experts, and some of them are very, very skilled in that crime. We have a pickpocket team that's a team of undercover plainclothes police officers assigned to the Transit Bureau, whose sole mission is to work on deterring and arresting pickpockets, as is all our district offices, public safety, plainclothes teams, and the uniform officers. So although we're down marginally, it's a crime that we're definitely hyper-focused on this year.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief? If not, thank you again, Chief, and sorry for the delay, and looking forward to seeing you next month. Rich, you want to continue?
Thank you so much. Again, thank you for allowing me to call in on Zoom, and for anyone there who thinks I wasn't there, I am, and I'm here, we're committed, and that's that. Thank you very much, everyone. Be well.
All right, thank you.
We saw you on TV, Chief, so we
Yes,
know you were
we
there. Thank you, Chair. My remarks are going to be brief today because we have a number of, actually 3 special reports. The first is we'll give you an update as to what New York City Transit is doing around fare evasion, particularly on what the Blue Ribbon Commission's analysis and suggestions. Second is, as previously discussed at last month's board meeting, we have an update on the free bus pilot. Judy will provide some detail about the 5 routes that were selected, why, and how we're going forward with implementation. And finally, John Kaufman's here from Strategic Initiatives to talk about customer counts, which is, as you all know, the big biannual survey that we do, different from our monthly Pulse. Pulse only gets a couple thousand responses, but the customer count survey usually elicits over 100,000 responses, data rich. So bottom line is you're going to hear from me sparingly. Let me just pull up a couple of slides just to go through quickly. And I know, Q, you're going to give one as well, a quick update. So just a quick update on faster, cleaner, safer. You know, we announced last year our North Star goal, as you all know, to get to 7 in 10 customers satisfied by June. 1 year down, 1 year to go in that goal. And we are moving in the right direction, obviously, with work to do. And we'll talk about that work in a moment. But so far, Subways is hovering around 60%, 6 out of 10 customers. Bus has been in the mid to high 60s. We can talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that Frank is underway with. And then paratransit continues to hover around that 70% goal as well. Obviously, you know, I do want to acknowledge and continue to acknowledge the experience that, you know, some of our customers on paratransit have, which is not positive. Folks in the audience express that. But, you know, again, we're trying to strike a balance among e-hail and our traditional services to make sure everyone is getting a good ride. On faster service for our bus customers. So Able, you know, we continue to talk about Able because in fact, it's been so impactful. So in the last several months, we've brought on 12 new Able routes, over the last year, for a total of 19. And as you can see, not only are bus speeds increasing in those routes, but almost as importantly, is collision rates are down significantly, which is why we've been, for example, hammering home the need with some of the advocates here for a more robust Fordham Road and other bus lanes in the city. But collision rates drop significantly in those areas. Frank and the team will talk a little bit about the priority routes in a moment, but the 29 routes are underperforming routes. We're already seeing customer satisfaction largely improve in those areas. People are actually seeing, their bus speeds increase, better customer service. You know, the local bus redesign, I know we've continued to talk about Queens and Brooklyn, public process, which is so important. These things take time. But on the Bronx, we've certainly seen an increase, again, in both customer satisfaction and improvement as a result of the good work the bus team and the OP team have done in the Bronx last year. We're continuing to collaborate with the DOT, and so not only is it bus lanes, but transit signal prioritization, for example, better signage. You know, Commissioner Rodriguez and his team continue to be strong partners with us to improve bus speeds. And then the MTA, we have been working with the NYPD on traffic enforcement initiatives. So this is something I know Frank is in particular very pleased with, but we've seen improvement. If you can see to the right side, maybe Frank, you want to just spend a minute or less just talking a little bit about some of the enforcement initiatives and how successful those have been in places where we don't have Able.
Yes, thank you, Rich. So, taking off from what we mentioned last committee, we are performing an MTA-led NYPD traffic initiative in several right-of-ways. Specifically, we began in March in Queens, and we expanded to the Bronx, and we will expand into Brooklyn early August. And it's been very successful. We're targeting illegally parked cars, dollar vans, and just unauthorized persons in our busways and bus lanes. Year to date, June to date, since March, we've issued 6,300 tickets and 40 arrests and over 450 moving violations. But I think a really sign of the success to this is that specifically in June, in 5 of the major corridors in Jamaica Center, where we've given out a lot of tickets, I want to say we've only given out 220 tickets in June, which really is a testament to the success. We're not here only just to give out tickets, right? The enforcement is to change behavior and to speed up our service, and it's doing both. So a big shout out to the buses road operations team who spearheaded this effort, and to NYPD, the several precincts who have been jumped in and are really putting resources towards us. So thanks.
Thanks, Frank. And the other point here on the slide is just to show, again, thanks to Frank and the team focusing on the 25 priority routes, we're seeing success. So 62% of those routes have performed improvement in 3 or more categories, and we're seeing an increase in customer satisfaction as well. So again, we're seeing early results. This is just something we kicked off about 2 or 3 months ago. So a lot of work to be done, but certainly our customers are noticing. On faster service, not to be outdone, Subways is also the speed team, whose work continues. 873 signal tests were performed from January to June. This is to make sure that, for example, the signal timers are working appropriately. Here, it's every second counts. And since the inception of this program, 376 civil speed increases have been made on the Flushing, Brighton, and White Plains lines. So a lot happening, and I just want to, again, call out Demetrius and team for safely, and I want to emphasize that, safely improving the speeds on our system. Now, as mentioned earlier, we did announce and implement new service, enhanced service in the G, J, and M lines this past July. We, again, want to thank Governor Hochul and the legislature providing us the resources to add additional service. And by the way, most other major transit systems in America are cutting service, okay? And I do want to, in particular, push back on some remarks earlier about how, with congestion pricing, we won't be ready. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are running 100% pre-COVID service and adding more service, as you can see in August, for 75 to 80% of our customer base. We have capacity, and so the estimated 28,000 or so folks who we hope will shift from cars to transit once congestion pricing occurs, come. We are ready for you. We have the room. Our cars are cold. They'll be hot in the winter. They're cold now. I'm telling you, we're excited to see you soon. But coming in August, we have on Monday the 7th, additional service on the C line. Saturday the 12th, we'll do additional weekend service on the 1 on the 6th. And then at the end of August, the N and the R as well. So we're, again, continuing to add service thanks to the governor and the legislature for those resources. And I just have to say, again, having been in other places and observed other places, it is a testament to all the work the board, MTA leadership, and our political leadership to give us the resources to add service while other systems are not. I stole one slide from John, but it was, I thought, important to note on the cleaner side. So, we have been renovating our stations over the last several months. And again, customers are noticing. So for these stations here we've listed, we're looking at the fall customer survey and then what John will talk about momentarily. And for most of these stations, in fact, I think all but one, we are moving the dial. Customers are seeing and feeling at their stations a brighter, cleaner experience. So I think to the extent, if we ever had to consider whether or not this is working and whether we should continue, this proof is in the pudding that certainly our customers are noticing. So kudos to the stations team for all their work. And then Q, I wanted to have you have a quick opportunity to just talk a little bit about accessibility as well. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Rich. As we heard earlier in the day, this month we're celebrating the 33rd anniversary of the signing of the ADA. July is Disability Pride Month, and I want to extend a shout out and a huge thanks to you, Rich, and your entire team for all that we're doing throughout New York City Transit to enhance accessibility. On Omni expansion, we have successfully launched Omni for customers with reduced fare, customers with disabilities, a population of about 1.5 million people who now have access to Omni, the first in the nation of an open loop system for these customers to have parity with other riders and how they get to pay. So thank you so much to the entire Omni team for that. Paratransit is coming up with our pilot for Omni later on this summer. On subways, Demetrius and his team continue to out-deliver our goals and enhance system-wide accessibility with our tactile warning strips and having a system-wide approach for installing tactiles at all remaining platforms between Demetrius' team and our partners in C&D. The whiteout gates continues to be a success, reducing the number of people fare evading with those addition of those WAGs that we have where we used to have a slam gate. We see at Subfin over 2,000 people are coming through paying for that entry where they used to just walk right through. We're seeing station agents out of booth being a huge success, not only from our customers who are telling us how much they appreciate being greeted getting more information from someone who's not behind the glass, but from our employees who tell us how much they enjoy being able to give that extra service. As we heard earlier from one of our public speakers, our elevator performance data has risen, and we are doing a lot better than we were doing. We heard from Christopher D. Greif earlier about the relationship that we have with third-party operators like the Port Authorities and private elevator folks who really impact the service that we're able to give our customers. We're seeing that service increase because, like our customers, we are also coming after those bad actors, and we expect for them to deliver as good as we do, if not better. And of course, Frank and his team continue to be great partners for accessibility, continuing to move New Yorkers with disabilities 24/7 every day with the first fully accessible bus fleet in the nation, and moving people with disabilities since before the signing of the ADA. Over 800 buses with an additional flexible seating, over 8 seats that flip up for customers who need that space with a guide dog, a stroller, a space for luggage, what it may be. And of course, on strollers, over 1,000 buses have been retrofitted to accommodate for our open stroller program here with about 57 routes being serviced. So thank you, Frank, for continuing to move the dial on accessibility. And Chris, I really couldn't ask for a better partner than the work that you and your team do on paratransit. Really a Herculean act of moving more than 30,000 trips a day for customers with disabilities. It's really the largest paratransit program in the world. And we heard a lot from our speakers before, but it's like the mayor likes to say about that guy who was getting his portrait painted, his face painted with a scar on his face. And he told the painter, "Don't forget the rest of my face. Yes, I do have a scar, but don't forget the rest of me." We hear a lot from our customers, and we are by no means resting on our laurels. We know that we have a lot room for improvement and room to grow, but we are doing a damn good job moving customers with disabilities every day here in New York City. So thank you, Chris, for continuing to move the needle in paratransit and leveraging technology to do so. Having more customers being able to reserve those trips on an app so that they don't have to call. Having more customers with a pilot see a photo of their driver, like we do in some ride-hail services out there. And in blue and white vehicles, over 75% of those customers are by themselves, much like a taxi service. We are no longer seeing that tour of the boroughs, that circuitous trips. E-hail aside, blue and white dedicated service, you still have customers riding by themselves, which is an amazing, amazing service delivery that Chris continues to provide. So thank you so much, Chris, and to the entire team for really enhancing accessibility system-wide. Rich, thank you.
Thank you, Q. Any questions for Richard Q before we move on? If not, we'll move on to fair compliance.
Thank you, Chair. We'll pull up another brief deck. So I'll tee it up, and then we'll ask Frank and Demetrius just to talk a little bit about what we're doing in both bus and subway. But suffice to say, I've been given the slides to say fare evasion's a problem. I don't think that requires lots of debate or time, but certainly MTA and between subways and buses, we lost about $600 million last year. That is unacceptable by any measure, and it is certainly unacceptable for our fare-paying customers who have told us here, as you can see, for example, I feel like a sucker for paying. It's incumbent upon us to do everything we can possibly do, and I think the Blue Ribbon Commission gave us a very good blueprint, if you will, on things that we could be doing. We didn't wait for that to come out. We were already working on a number of initiatives, a couple new ones we'll talk about today in particular. But suffice to say, it's an important part of our job to ensure that for the hardworking New Yorkers who are paying their fare every day, we need to make sure that those who aren't are. And for example, those who might struggle with paying for the fare, letting them know that there are, equitable opportunities to pay. So, the city raised the fare eligibility earlier this month from 100 to 120% of the federal poverty line. We applaud that, both the mayor and the city council, for pushing that forward. We're going to do our part to make sure that New Yorkers know about this program. There are still hundreds of thousands who are eligible but have not enrolled, and under the previous poverty line. Now, with the new change, there'll be additional New Yorkers that qualify. We will be pushing that. pretty hard. And in addition, now we're also accepting the ID NYC as another official form of identification for our reduced fare program. Our station agents are now equipped with the knowledge of what these new fare products are and encouraging folks on how to apply. And then again, the city has worked with us. They've joined me at the transit talks, which we have about twice a month, and they're at Coney Island at the customer service center now, I think about once a month to take enrollment as well. So just really appreciate the partnership we have with the city to make sure, New Yorkers understand that, if they are struggling to afford the base fare, that there are opportunities to reduce that and pay their fair share as well. Frank, I'll let you talk a little bit about what we're about to embark on in bus.
Okay, thank you, Rich. So this summer, we will implement an education, equity, and an effective enforcement approach to address bus fare evasion. The goals will be to improve customer awareness of the opportunities to pay lower fares, raise visibility, and improve the equity of fare evasion inspections on buses in all 5 boroughs, and increase the effectiveness overall of our Eagle team. In preparation, as recommended by the Blue Ribbon Panel, using data analysis, we have identified several bus stop hubs we will begin targeting. We are training our Eagle team agents to engage our customers on different fare programs and payment methods. As we begin at each bus stop hubs, and we'll deploy throughout across the system, a few at a time, the first 30 days at minimum at each hub will be engagement, outreach, and education only. The first week that we deploy at each respective hub, we will host a transit talk event that Rich mentioned, and which includes members of Rich's executive team, GCR, our customer team, and several members from the city. When enforcement begins, post 30 days, after the customer outreach, we will deploy a high concentration of Eagle team inspectors to bus stop hubs to enforce both local and SBS routes for approximately 3 months. This will include the partnering with NYPD, who has committed to send resources to ensure the safety of our inspectors, our bus operators, and the public. And we will be evaluating the success of this through, lasting behavioral changes that we see and tracking our key performance indicators such as fare evasion, ridership, and incidents. This is a joint effort between the transit team, Department of Buses, Eagle team, Department of Security, our customer team, Government Community Relations, traffic checker team, the Omni marketing team, headquarters, analytics team, and finally, several city agencies. So we look forward to embarking on this effort. Thank you.
I'm going to kick it now to Demetrius to talk a little bit about a number of, again, initiatives that he and his team have kicked off in subways. D?
Thank you, Rich. So earlier in the presentation, Rich noted that around $600 million we've been losing last year for fare evasion. About $285 million of that was on the subway side. And it's estimated that 16% of that $285 million, so $45.6 million, comes by way of turnstile backcocking. We've all seen it. Someone pulls back on the bar just far enough to step over it when reversing to go to the forward direction. To show the ingenuity of our in-house team within EMD, they saw this as a challenge and they initiated a project to stop it, and they successfully engineered a solution to the locking mechanism of the turnstile that stops the gear from turning fully. This modification restricts the back turn of the turnstile and closes the gap that people regularly use to evade the fare. So we will show you. I don't know how to do this. This is an example of what it was like before.
This is a man who can't afford it, and his designer shoes, his $1,000 cell phone, and his Hermes tie.
And what it looks like now after we've modified the turnstile.
This is only a $900 phone with a designer backpack. Whoops.
So we started a soft launch of the project, installing at 26 turnstiles, and we monitored it from March to June. We plan to integrate in 240 more modification of the turnstiles through September of this year. We're estimating that the remaining 3,479 turnstiles will be modified roughly over a 2-year period. And I talked about earlier, 16%, $45.6 million. It'll probably cost us about just under $2 million to do this modification. And even if we get a portion of that back, it will save the company a ton of money. But as you can see, it definitely works. It stops them. It doesn't stop them from seeking other means of fare evading, but it definitely does stop the backcocking.
We have some questions.
Do you want to wait
Andrew,
till after the presentation?
yeah, why don't we wait until Demetrius is done? Okay.
All right. So another thing that we're doing, if you look on the left, you'll see we're also working with our partners in C&D to explore additional design changes that address fare evasion. This includes a short-term fixes to deter jumping over. To the left, you'll see the turnstile sleeves that add height to the arm itself. And to the right, you'll see panels that we're currently working on, which will be installed to prevent people from hoisting themselves up and vaulting over the turnstile itself. For gate locks, we noticed a large number of people, both internal and external, were in possession of a 1620 key, which is a key that had previously been used to open the gate by emergency services. It was possible to take the key into any hardware store and have it duplicated. So we removed all of the locks that had previously been 1620 keys and installed caps over them. This prevents all of the unauthorized users from having access to the system that already had previously had access to them. Now, we've already, since doing this, we've done this throughout the system now. Since doing this, we've had a number of people come up to the station agent saying, my key isn't working to access the system. And so we ask for their identification, and the conversation usually stops at that point. So at least that's another method that we're taking. Our partners at FDNY have sole access to the new keys, and those keys cannot be duplicated. Another initiative that we've undertaken between EMD and stations working together is the inspection of all the gate magnets throughout the system that were no longer strong enough to keep the gates closed or open with light pressure applied. We recognize that after doing so, there are a number of modifications that some of the vandals are making to the gates, so it does require us to continually re-inspect the locations because of the type of fare evasion, whether it's putting tape over the magnets themselves. There are some things that we have to continue to inspect. On delayed egress, in collaboration with C&D, we're also working on an effort to reduce the use of exit gates for non-emergencies by seeking a variance from the state to implement a delay to the gates and select stations where it's safe to do so. And also, with the support of C&D, we'll be performing controlled testing to inform the future pilots at these locations. Lastly, on gate guards, kudos to Bobby Deal and Ken Tobin for their great work on security. They've taken on this project from inception to now being deployed at as many as 33 stations. That initiative has brought approximately $11.9 million in net revenue, which is revenue that exceeds the cost of deploying the gate guards. Now on Whiteout Gate, this March we installed our first WAG at Atlantic Avenue Barclay Center, and Sutphin Archer came soon afterwards. This was an initiative with accessibility in mind and has offered travelers, families, and strollers with those with accessibility needs the ability to enter the system more simply. With more than 2,000 customers using the gates daily, we are measuring how much demand there is for this kind of technology. We expect similar style gates of narrow widths to be installed at the remainder of the fare arrays at Sutphen by the end of the summer. And we're also looking to add 2 more ADA locations to the WAG pilot for this fall. One key element to note is that more ADA locations to the WAG pilot one key to note is we're continuing to explore the implementation of design elements and improvements to help deter fare evasion. So I'm sure we've all seen that there are a number of videos out there that show folks trying to find ways to evade the fare with these new systems. So we are incorporating that in our designs going forward, and we're waiting for those designs to be incorporated before rolling out additional locations. And lastly, in the long term, we're thinking about next generation fare gates, including a planned RFI, which will be released later this year. We will take the time to look at what we've learned from the WAG pilot to refine the design, the specifications as needed for our environment. And we're partnering with C&D in advance of this process. That's all I have.
Demetrius, I have a quick question before I take questions from the committee.
Sure.
Can you go back one slide where you said you have to go to code variance from the state? What code variance request do we need?
So currently, when at most stations, you have the exit bar that has to be pushed immediately for a person to exit the gate. Most people will take that exit as a matter of convenience. They don't want to wait at the turnstile. But it is not. The problem is that's usually a fare evasion key point. People will wait at that gate. It is not required except in an emergency in certain locations. So we're requesting a variance to pilot using certain locations where the bar, when you press it, it will delay, which will generally send the customers to a different location. They would rather not wait at that location if it's going to delay exiting.
And why from the state and not the city?
I believe it's tied. I'm not positive. I'll have to get back to you on that.
All right, thank you. All right. Andrew, then Randy, then David.
Thank you.
Great presentation, by the way, both Frank and Demetrius. Sorry.
Thanks for this, Demetrius. On the stations where you're doing the work to stop backhocking of turnstiles, putting an arm on and all of that, is every set of turnstiles at a given station being treated with the same treatment so that people won't just go from one set of turnstiles to the other to complete their fare evasion?
So on the backhocking, we started at locations that we could monitor fully ourselves.
We're not going to disclose those locations, right?
No, I don't want that.
No. And so we did do the entire fare array in those locations, and we'll be doing them in entire clips. The design efforts for the fin and the side panels are still underway, so we won't be doing them in conjunction with the backhocking.
But I was getting at, if somebody finds they can't backhock and walk through, at the northern end of a station, would they just walk to the other end and try it? So I'm asking if you're doing all sets of turnstiles in a given station.
Yes, they're being rolled out together.
Great, thank you.
It's very encouraging to see that you're doing something. Is it, without going into too much detail, is it a very labor-intensive thing to do, or is it something that can be done quickly? And if so, what would stop it from rolling them out to more stations in a more timely manner than the period of time that you mentioned?
So we're talking about the backhocking. It requires the arm itself to be removed. We're doing this. This isn't a whole new crew being hired. We're working with the existing resources that we have. So we could probably expedite it if we hired additional folks, but we don't have the additional resources to hire people for this project.
So it's not like something that you can prepare ahead of time and you just bring it in, you plop it onto the thing and go?
So they're the same resources that maintain our MVMs, our current turnstiles. So they've been planning for every weekend they've been going out to do the work.
Thank you.
David.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to praise this report and the effort that went into it. I was part of the group, so it's like self-praise. Yeah, but I particularly want to draw some of the board members' attention to the fact 6 years ago when I joined this board, the overwhelming focus in terms of fare evasion stops and arrests were in black and brown communities. This report and the evolution here by NYPD and others to recognize that this is a system-wide problem that has to be addressed in every station, and there can't be areas that are considered sacrosanct. Obviously, the majority of fare evasion loss is in buses. I won't criticize my friends in Staten Island, but it has one of the highest rates of fare evasion anywhere, but very few efforts at enforcement up until now. So the fact that the system is starting to recognize that this is endemic not only to the very poorest neighborhoods, but also to more advantaged neighborhoods, as we saw in some of the people trying to get through, is a real step forward in terms of giving a sense that there's going to be equity in the system in terms of how enforcement goes ahead. I also, pushed, and I think there's been recognition of using non-armed personnel in front of fare gates. Not only does it have a deterrent effect, someone in a uniform, just like meter people and the rest I've been talking about, does have an immediate effect in people saying, well, I'm not going to do that, there's someone watching. But also it avoids potential catastrophe for both the perpetrator, but also for the NYPD getting into, we've seen it in subway surfing, teenagers and the rest do not necessarily have good sense. And anything we can do to avoid catastrophic outcomes is something I think we should push for in terms of restricting and stopping fare evasion. But I'd like to thank the leadership of the MTA and the NYPD in starting to make this move to a different kind of enforcement.
Thank you, David. Sharif.
So I too would like to lend my voice to commend the team here for taking quick action to move on some of the recommendations of the panel. I think, pleased to see movement on a number of fronts. So kudos to the team, and I see that Jeremy is here as well, and kudos to him. I know he spent a lot of time on this panel and the work that came out of it. A few questions. On the buses, the Eagle teams, how many do you expect that you will hire up, and how many local routes are you going to redeploy any from SBS in the short term until you hire up to the local routes? I do have a couple of others. Maybe I'll just throw them out. On the gate guards, also, how many, and do they rotate in terms of the gate guards, the slam gate guards? Because I realize that in some stations may not be as heavily trafficked, but certainly see in my travels some problems that we have there, but I certainly don't see the orange vests. And have you heard of any confrontations? I know that there was a highly publicized incident of some confrontations with some of the civilian guards. Are you hearing any of that on the ground with respect to the guards that have been deployed? And then last question, on the slam gates, great to see that. I understand we have an application pending before the state. When you say that there are certain stations that can do this, just curious about the criteria. I mean, I imagine it's if there's trouble with egress with respect to space. So just curious about the criteria and really how many stations could you actually get to? Because I think it's a great solution and would love to see how far we can push on that. Thank you.
Let me take those. I'll take them all. On the on the bus stop question, so we've identified, I think, approximately 20 hubs, if you will, of areas where there are multiple bus stops, so we can be addressing multiple bus routes, if you will, at the same time. And we've looked at that through a number of lenses, including the equity lens that, Board Member Jones mentioned, which was foremost in our mind because, as we have seen and we have all observed, fare evasion is an issue across the city in all 5 boroughs. So the idea, I think, is that we would only be doing probably 2 or 3 hubs at a time, just because of the resource question you asked. In anticipation of this program being rolled out, we have been hiring Eagle team members up. I think our goal was to hire approximately 50. Is that yes or no? 70? And so that process is underway. And I do want to call out NYPD and Transit and the chief in particular. They have said that they would support us having police in the area, so not as the primary enforcement, but if there is an issue, we obviously had an issue 2 months ago with our Eagle team actually being shot at by a fare evader on SBS, but this will be local bus. We're focused on local bus. So that on bus to that question. Your second question was? Now I forget, sorry. I talked too long.
No problem. On the gate guards.
The gate guards. So we do rotate. I think the theory, what we've seen is it takes probably a couple of months to really ingrain behavior change. And so we've typically kept the gate guards at a station minimum 8 weeks, sometimes longer. I don't have the data in front of me, but the last time we ran this data, we still believe that the guards are paying for themselves and then some. That is still a net revenue add. Obviously, it's hard to prove a negative, right? Would someone have paid or not, as the case may be, but just looking at the historicals for the number of stations that we've done, we're pretty confident of that. But I would say we rotate them, again, every couple of months where we see behavior change. And then again, we look at those statistics in particular, including what you'll hear from John in a moment, which is customer satisfaction. If our customers are saying fare evasion is particularly high at a station, or if there's unease about the environment, I think also having that orange vest, as Board Member Jones said, is not only about fare evasion, but it's also just a sense of safety. Last question. Sorry, Sharif.
Last question. I will do it separately next time. The slam gates and the variance pending before the state, and basically just curious about the characteristics, because we want to take it all the way to as many stations as possible, but what would make a station sort of not ideal?
Yeah, I think that one we'll have to get back to you. That one in particular, our colleagues in C&D have been leading for that variance, but I think as you described it, the characteristics are correct. It's a fire code question and one where egress needs to be thought through. Obviously, I also think we're thinking about, can our station agents potentially play a role? Are there ways to automate gates, in the future? I will tell you, for example, in my previous experience in a different city, when we had the WAG-like gates out, if a fire alarm was pulled in that station, the gates would open, right? So, there are, I think, ways as we adopt new technologies in the future to address the important egress question, but we can get you some more details about. But your nose and the characteristics is correct.
Andrew, and then Midori, did you have a question or no? Go ahead, Andrew.
No. So on the issue of the gate, the turnstile watchers, whether they're in orange or they're not, just having someone there, and the new gates that you described at Sutphin Archer, has any investigation been done on just immediately adjoining stations, like with all of this attention at Sutphin Archer, has it picked up at Parsons Archer, just a few blocks away?
We do look at that. We also look, in particular, I think one thing we've really looked at is whether our professional swipers have moved around, if you will. And so I think that's something I'm looking at, Pat and our security team, that's something we do look at, Andrew, pretty clearly. I think the question of whether a customer doesn't, will leave the station and go walk 2 blocks, that's a little harder for us, but we're really looking at those sort of professional swipers we know are out there.
Thank you.
And Midori, did you have a question?
No, I'm okay.
Oh,
Got it.
okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen and team and everyone for all the hard work. And I echo what David Jones said before. This is a long time coming, and really, and look forward to hearing how this is going to help us recoup that $600 million in fare evasion that we've lost. I think we're moving on to Judy now, right?
Good afternoon. As Rich mentioned earlier, last month the board approved the fare-free bus pilot, and today I'm going to talk through the routes that we have selected for the pilot and talk briefly about the criteria that we use to select those routes. But before I do that, I just want to quickly review the purpose and the parameters of the fare-free pilot. So, as stated in the legislation, to understand the impact of fare-free bus routes, we're going to be looking at ridership, paid and unpaid, quality of life issues, bus speed performance, operations, and other issues as the MTA deems relevant. As stated in the legislation, the pilot is to include 5 fare-free local bus routes, 1 in each borough. The cost cannot exceed more than $15 million in net operating costs, and that would include revenue loss as well as implementation costs. And the board approved it on June 27th, and we will meet the requirement to implement within 90 days of board adoption by implementing it on September 24th. Just want to reiterate and note that the fare-free bus routes shall revert to regular revenue service 6 to 12 months after the fare-free bus pilot program begins. We'll be doing an evaluation at the 6-month mark and at the program's conclusion. As noted last month, as a companion to the fare-free bus pilot, paratransit trips for customers who begin and end their trip within 3/4 of a mile of each of the individual fare-free route areas will also be fare-free. This is what other transit agencies did in Boston, Rhode Island, Utah, and Kansas City. They made these paratransit trips free within a similar catchment area of their fare-free bus routes. So moving on to our selection criteria. In selecting the fare-free routes, we used the criteria in the legislation, which was ridership, paid and unpaid, service adequacy, equity for low-income and economically disadvantaged communities, and access to employment and commercial activity. In addition, we wanted to minimize the overlap with other bus and subway routes, primarily to limit riders' confusion in determining whether the bus they were getting on was free or not, but also to minimize significant ridership shifts to the fare-free routes that could lead to overcrowding or operational issues. We also needed to ensure that the bus routes we selected had buses that were equipped with automatic passenger counters, or APCs, so that we can monitor the ridership easily. And then we wanted to, on the selected routes, have some available capacity to address potential ridership increases. Using these criteria, we evaluated all the non-express bus routes in the city, which numbers over 250 routes. Most local routes have significant overlap with other bus routes, which significantly narrowed down the number of routes that we would consider. And then we applied the other criteria, which led us to select the 5 routes that I'm going to talk to you now about. So in the Bronx, we selected the BX18 A and B route, which is located in the western part of the Bronx. The BX18A route operates in a counterclockwise loop from East 170th Street at Grand Concourse up McCombs Road to the Morris Heights neighborhood, then down Underwood Avenue to Highbridge, and then back to East 170th Street and Grand Concourse. The BX18B makes a clockwise loop, operating mostly on the same roads, except it goes up Sedgwick Avenue rather than down Underwood. Both of these loop routes connect to the number 4 train at Jerome Avenue and East 170th Street, and the B&D trains at Grand Concourse. So in terms of average daily ridership, This includes paid and unpaid riders. About 4,500 riders use this route. It has significant available capacity, 59%, and the route is entirely in an equity area. Major employers include the Bronx Lebanon Hospital Center and the Bronx Community College. So there's a lot of information on these route profile slides. We'll make this presentation available to you so you can review it closely. Just in terms of frequency, I'll say that for peak hour frequencies, it's 10 minutes on this route.
Judy, I think you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you counted how many people use these routes currently?
Correct.
Okay.
These are numbers from November 2022, and as I said, we did incorporate unpaid riders as well.
Okay.
So in Brooklyn, we selected the B60 route. This route operates between Canarsie and Williamsburg. It also serves the Brownsville, Ocean Hill, and Bushwick neighborhoods. It connects to several subway and bus routes. In terms of riders, the average daily ridership is approximately 10,200. Available capacity is 37%, and this route also is 100% in equity areas. Major employers include Brookdale University Hospital and Medical Center, Wyckoff Heights Medical Center, and the New York City Health and Hospitals Woodhull Hospital. It also connects to several subway lines and other bus routes, and it has a peak hour frequency of 8 to 10 minutes. So in Manhattan, we selected the M116 crosstown route in northern Manhattan. It operates between Broadway and West 106th Street, then goes up Manhattan Avenue and across 116th Street, serving Central Harlem and East Harlem. In terms of ridership, it has approximately 10,400 daily riders, available capacity of 27%. 88% of the route is in an equity area, and major employers include St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital Center, Columbia University, and the East River Plaza Mall. Peak hour frequencies range between 5 and 8 minutes. And in Queens, we selected the Q4 route. This route's located in the southeastern part of Queens and operates between Cambria Heights, near the Nassau border, to Jamaica Center, the Parsons Archer station. It operates primarily on Linden Boulevard, Merrick Boulevard, and Archer Avenue. And as I said, it goes to the Parsons Archer station where it connects to the E, J, and M trains. This route also serves a Long Island, what? Z. Thank you, Andrew. I misspoke. It also serves a Long Island Railroad station at St. Albans, and we're particularly interested to see if folks will change their behavior and maybe take this bus to the Long Island Railroad. On an average weekday, it carries approximately 9,900 riders. It has 40% available capacity, and 99% of the route is in an equity area. Major employers include Jamaica Center, York College, and the St. Albans VA Hospital. Its peak hour frequencies range between 9 and 10 minutes. And lastly, in Staten Island, we selected the S46/96. The 96 is a limited stop route that overlies the 46 route that operates during peak periods in the peak direction. This route operates between St. George Ferry Terminal to the West Shore Plaza Shopping Mall, primarily operating on Castleton Avenue and South Avenue. It serves the Staten Island Ferry and SIR. Ridership, average daily ridership is approximately 8,900. It has available capacity at 48%, and 61% of the route is in an equity area. Major employers include New York Empire Outlets, Richmond University Medical Center, the West Shore Plaza Shopping Mall, and the Forest Promenade Shopping Plaza, as well as the Staten Island Teleport. On the S46, its peak hour frequencies range between 6 and 10 minutes. So this was kind of discussed a little bit last month about branding and how we're going to brand the buses and the bus stops to ensure that folks understand whether the bus is fare-free. At every bus stop on these routes in the Guide-A-Ride, there's going to be a panel indicating that the bus is fare-free. We're going to be using green and black destination signs, as you see here in the photo. So the route will be listed, will be always displayed, but then it will cycle between a fare-free message and the destination of the bus. We're going to have removable window signage or decals inside the bus, removable decals covering onboard fare information, and removable covers on the MetroCard fare box and the Omni readers. So I just want to highlight that this bus branding can easily be changed out in a matter of minutes so that the bus can be available to operate on non-fare-free bus routes, since many buses frequently operate on multiple routes each day. I think Rich last month talked about how we didn't want to create these micro fleets because we just, that would just really increase our bus requirements, and it's something that we just really don't have those buses to do. So in terms of evaluation, clearly we want to evaluate and learn from the pilot, and we're going to be looking at several criteria as part of that. In the legislation, they specifically say that we need to look at ridership, fare evasion, scheduled service levels, performance metrics, including percent of service delivered, bus speeds, customer journey time performance, weight assessment, additional bus stop time, as well as additional travel time. We're also going to be looking at costs by route. And there's a few things that we added. We want to look at the quality of life issues, particularly safety and security for customers and our employees. And we really want to understand the ridership changes. We want to know if there's growth on these routes. Where is that growth coming from? Is it coming from non-fare-free routes, or is it coming from people who previously made the trip by walking, biking, or driving? Or are they making trips that they just never made before? When we look at this data, we're going to be comparing this at the route segment level, particularly where we've got segments of the route that overlap with other bus routes. We'll be looking at the route level. We'll be looking at adjacent routes, and we'll be taking this data and comparing it at the borough level and at the system-wide level. Next steps, marketing. We're still working on our marketing plan, but we will have a microsite on our website detailing the pilot. We're going to be conducting pre-implementation surveys in September so that we can learn about our current riders and what kind of trips that they're making. Frank and his team are working on implementation. They plan to have some extra supervision out there and some extra buses on hand to address potential crowding and operational issues, particularly at the start of the pilot. For the 6-month evaluation, we're going to be doing some post-implementation surveys to follow up on the information, the previous information, and find out what people's trip purposes are and if, what their previous travel modes were. So at this point, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So Judy, again, thank you for going through a very detailed presentation. I'm assuming this is going to start right after Labor Day?
It starts September 24th. We needed a
September
little
24th,
time.
okay.
We didn't want to do the pre-implementation surveys in August. So we'll be starting those in September and then kicking off the pilot September 24th.
After the Jewish holidays, I'm assuming? Well, who knows? Anyway. And I guess take it to the end of March, right? That's the 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Questions? Andrew, then Randy.
Thanks for
Then
the
Midori. I'm
presentation,
sorry.
Judy. You showed signage at bus stops, but you didn't show on-board signage where there might be a sign that would say, you know, congrats, you're riding on our test of a free bus. Please remember you have to pay on all connections, or words to that effect. Will there be signage within the bus?
I mean, that's something we can look into, where there's going to be, when they walk on the bus, they'll see that it's a free bus. But in terms of the transfer information, I know we'll put that on our website. But as I say, in terms of our marketing materials, we're still working on it. But you're right, riders will have to pay when they transfer.
And speaking of that, transfers, will you be monitoring where these buses have transfers to other routes and or subways to make sure that fares are not being evaded when they make the transfers?
I think that,
to look at that, obviously.
yes, that's certainly something that we do want to look at.
Thank you.
Interesting presentation, thank you. On the signs where it says fare free, is it possible to put an ending date, since you've told us it's going to be whatever day, so people can get into their mind that this free service is only going to be until, you could add that wording?
Actually, on the front of the bus, where it says fare free, it says ends March 30th,
Okay, I looked at the
2024.
Okay, and Yom Kippur begins the 24th at night.
Okay. Thank you. Midori.
Hi, thank you, Judy, so much for the presentation. Obviously, this is the first time the MTA is doing this, and so this is something new for you all, so much appreciated. I have a question regarding the routes. I think that a couple of times you invoked the words equity area, and I believe when it came to the Bronx bus redesign update, you also invoked that word. And I had asked kind of for definitions and what that really means, because that does go beyond Title VI. I am very excited that MTA is, addressing and contemplating equity areas, but I think we all can have different definitions of what that is. So I'd like to make the request again to have that information to really understand, because I believe it sounded like it was a key part of the evaluation process for which routes were picked. So that would be much appreciated, Judy. Thank you.
That's a good point. And just, in terms of, because everything was done for each borough to select a route, it kind of manifested itself differently in different boroughs. So for example, in Staten Island, to be able to provide, this route in an equity area, it was really limited. We had to select a route in northern Staten Island. And in Manhattan, most of the north-south routes really have a lot of overlap. So we looked at crosstown routes. And so it was really a decision of, do you do the M8 or do you do the M116? So it was pretty straightforward. But I heard your question and I appreciate it, and we will follow up.
Great. Any other questions for Judy? All right. Thank you, Judy, and your team. We now move on to John Kaufman.
Hello. Good afternoon. I'm the head of the Strategic Initiatives group here at headquarters, and recently took over the customer and market research team, working closely with Shanifa and operating agencies to make sure they're getting robust customer perspectives and insights to better shape their operational plans. As we did for the railroads, some of you were for that meeting, I'm presenting the findings for our spring customers count survey for New York City Transit here. This is our biannual large sample survey, which helps us understand customer satisfaction trends and underlying drivers of satisfaction at the line, route, and station level. This is an online survey done the last 2 weeks of May of this year. Was offered in English and translated into 8 other languages. with a phone option available for those who don't have online access. This cycle, we received a very large amount of responses, as Rich mentioned. Nearly 80,000 New York City Transit customers submitted ratings. They could do it on multiple modes, so we had 110,000 subway journeys, 25,000 bus route evaluations, and 3,000 accessoride evaluations. Those are very large samples, probably the largest survey in the region, if not the country, at this for customer satisfaction, which gives us a lot of robust detail at the granular level, which we'll get into in a bit. Just in terms of an opening, to reach an overall satisfaction level, we also weight the sample using the census to adjust for income and minorities that might be underrepresented in those who responded, and balance it out against actual weekday ridership if for some reason we've got an imbalance across lines or routes. Let me summarize the overall customer satisfaction trends since we reestablished a baseline last spring when we consolidated all the surveys for all modes across the MTA into one similar instrument. You can see here each mode has from a year ago in the fall survey in November, and then what was done in late May. Across the board, these are going up or staying flat. In subways, up 2 points in the fall and 8 points since the baseline last spring. Buses are up marginally in this period. Express bus remains high at 79%, and Accessoride down a little bit from fall, but still up from last spring. I'm going to step you through a few different insights from these different modes, and let me start with subways. One thing we do is we ask all customers to select their 3 most important attributes around satisfaction. What you see here is the most common selections they give us in rank order. Of the top 7 mentions for important attributes, 5 are related to safety and security. These are the ones that are in orange, shaded orange here. That top row shows you people behaving erratically on board trains as the most important attribute right now for folks who are riding our system. You can also see this is actually came up from 4th ranked in the spring to now this erratic behavior on board trains being the top of the list here. Another change we saw with the survey was the second from the bottom, personal security in stations, dropped from number 1 to now be tied for 4th. This reduction in this one being selected is related to the benefit riders have seen from the surge of NYPD patrols in the stations. And so it's not surprising to us that it dropped down a little bit lower on the list, given the extra effort the NYPD has put in there. Let me dig a little bit deeper on the perceptions of safety and how it affects overall satisfaction. As I mentioned, there's 33 different attributes we offer customers to rate us on in the survey, and 9 of them have to do with safety and security. Those are the items I just mentioned to you, along with things like panhandling and levels of homelessness. On this left-hand pie chart, you can see how many respondents named safety-related attributes of top 3 importance. That green slice shows you that 19%, nearly 1 in 5, selected only safety-related attributes as their most important for satisfaction right now. You can also see the gray bar that 27% didn't mark any safety attributes, so very different perceptions of what's going on in the system. But you can see on the right, their overall scores for satisfaction are very, very different. You know, of those who did not select any safety and security attributes, they gave us a 67% satisfaction rating. For those who only selected safety attributes, they were showing up as 40% satisfied. Again, I would say this belies the point of that if it's important to you, it's very important to you, and it directs your satisfaction. For the things that Demetrius controls every day, this is one that's very hard for him to do a lot about when it's tied up in safety and relying on our partners. So how do customers see us performing against these attributes? This shows you the actual ratings of these scores, along with the change since the fall survey, which is noted in the triangles in the bars. In this period, most of the drivers are flat, except for personal security at stations at the second from the bottom, which actually improved in this period, again, related to that increased staffing overall. Since November, when there was a big surge in additional resources put into it, we are seeing that uptick in personal security from that fall survey. We're also seeing that is linked to the overall improved satisfaction in May when you compare it to fall, November of last year. Let me pivot to line-by-line evaluations. This slide shows you overall satisfaction by line, again with the triangles in the bar showing you the change from last fall. We included all the lines in here. The font gets a bit small, but if you look closely, you can see almost every line actually had an improvement since last fall. At the top of the table here, we show you the 3 top-ranked lines in fall and spring. In spring, the Q, the L, and the 7 showing slightly better positions than the rest of our lines. Most of you would know the 7 and L are CBTC lines and typically run more reliably and with more frequency. The lowest rated line you see on here is the JZ, which recently has had some lower ratings on both safety and personal security, dragging down that line. Another lens we find interesting is how satisfaction varies by frequency of travel. What you see on this slide is a common trend we've observed. Frequent riders tend to respond as less satisfied. There are many factors at play here, including the background of folks who just have to commute more often. Let's have a closer look at the key drivers that vary across this group. Across the top here, you can see those same 4 segments of travel frequency. And each column shows you the top 5 drivers for that segment satisfaction. We've shaded drivers the same, so you can quite quickly see the attributes that are getting selected are similar across the groups. And a lot of orange indicates still a heavy safety influence in all segments. As a customer uses our service more frequently, towards the right, the service-related attributes, which are in gray, become more important to them. In contrast, those who ride infrequently, we see those safety attributes in orange all across the top. Let's turn to some of the results from the increased focus Rich and Demetrius have put on customer service in the last 12 months. One key plank of that is these new customer service centers, which began rolling out in February of this year. The 10 stations rolled out prior to our spring survey are shown here, along with the ratings around the station staff at each of these. What we see is most of these stations have improved slightly with their highlighted ratings. If they've improved slightly, they're in green font with those numbers there. You can see some very large jumps. Myrtle Wyckoff up 10 points, Coney Island up 6 points, Penn Station up 4 points. This is coming against a backdrop of just overall station staff ratings being flat at 63%. Another major initiative, which Rich alluded to before, was the renovation program. This is a similar table to what he showed in his opening remarks, but again, showing you stations that have at least 100 customer responses and the difference in station satisfaction for those that have gone through the renovation. The stations listed in italics are large complexes where only a portion of the station may have been renovated, which is why you see some of those increases may not be as marked as some of the other ones. Of course, many factors play into overall station satisfaction, including line performance, but we do see improved station satisfaction percentages for most of these stations. Grand Street on the B&D shows significant double-digit improvement since the fall, now at 53%. Let me show you one tidbit around Omni users. As Omni adoption has been increasing for full fare customers, we're seeing our survey respondent mix shift as well. On the left-hand side of the slide, you can see nearly 40% of our respondents are using Omni. And as importantly, on the far right, you can also see they're much more satisfied with fare payment options than the rest. We're also increasingly using insights from this research to help shape future Omni marketing campaigns as we look for fuller adoption in the next 12 months. One last insight on subways. As we try to encourage higher ridership levels, we ask everyone what would encourage them to ride more. Here you can see what we heard cut by frequency of traveler. As we discussed earlier in our key driver discussion, safety elements remain prominent. Fewer people behaving erratically in the system is the top condition for all to want to ride more. We can also see how more frequent riders mention more service-related items, more reliability, and shorter wait times would help get these riders on the system more regularly. Let's switch topics to another mode, the bus system. Again, overall, the local limited and select bus had a 65% satisfaction rate. Well, that slide showed answers to the question of overall how satisfied are you on buses. This slide actually shows the aggregate of our route level bus scores. We feel this is a more useful barometer of our progress and more actionable for Frank and his team. It turns out these scores are also higher at 69% and improving more, up 3 points since fall on average. You can see riders in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens are all up 3 points since the fall. Similar trends can be seen on express bus routes, though I note that reflects just 2% of our total bus ridership. Let me turn to a couple of the focus areas Frank and his team have been focused on, starting with the Bronx bus redesign that rolled out last year. Since the redesign was implemented in June of last year, we're seeing clear improvement on our heaviest routes. This table shows each route that had a high enough respondent sample that we felt comfortable sharing here at least 50 respondents. 4 of these are showing clear improvements, those in green. 3 of those exceeded the Bronx average of 64% and the 5-borough average of 69%, with the M100 at 73%. The BX36, which has the highest average weekday ridership of all of the redesigned routes, is now 10 points better than where it was a year ago at 70%. There are additional 4 routes in here largely unchanged, and at the very bottom you can see the overall total, which shows a roll-up of all the routes where, again, the individual sample wasn't large enough, but in aggregate, it can tell you we're going in the right direction. We continue to work with bus leadership and operations planning and sharing more specific route ratings and verbatim feedback while they continue to tweak the routes and the operations. Another area that was mentioned before by Rich was around the 29 priority bus routes that Frank called out earlier this year as a focus goal to improve on sort of route by route. Here you can see the data on that. On the left-hand side shows you a very large sample of folks who ride these routes and in aggregate getting happier overall. On the right-hand side is a very detailed list of those routes and the samples that show a lot of green in that far right column showing you improvements from what was seen in the fall overall. A straight average of those routes on the right are up 8%, again, compared to that 3% route average we're seeing elsewhere. This is fantastic to see such improvement in a short amount of time, and we're seeing it in travel times, we're seeing it in wait times, a reduction in unexpected delays, and service reliability are all going up here. So again, early payoff from some of that focus. Let's round out the review here with a brief comment on Access-a-Ride, which is down just slightly from the fall. While the overall satisfaction decreased marginally, on the left-hand side you can see differences in satisfaction between those who use primary carriers only, the blue and white vans, and those who use for-hire only. There's actually a 12-point difference in satisfaction between those groups right now. We can see those same differences in the next 2 panels, which show the ratings for the 2 most important attributes to AAR customers, on-time pickup and my ride shows up. Chris and his team continue to engage deeply on findings like these and sharing with their external partners as they try to raise performance across the board. I hope you found this assortment of insights useful and gotten a sense of how we're trying to strengthen our in-house customer market research function to better serve the agency presidents and their leadership, and arm Shanif and her team with more customer insights to help in marketing and communication. This page shows a few of the other things we're doing to regularly help catalyze actionability from this valuable customer input. At this point, I also want to thank the customer research team sitting here in the back, Mark Blutstein, Patrick Cialis, and Janice Pepper, for their ongoing regular efforts to keep these folks informed and keep the insights coming month in, month out. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
So first of all, thank you, John. Thank you to the team. You guys should all stand up and take a bow because you've worked very hard on this. Seriously, get up. Come on.
Very,
You worked
very
hard
bashful.
on this.
Thank you.
I feel like I was back in school studying all this. Are we going to get all the backup? Do we have the tabs and all this?
Yeah, we'll
available?
post this online along with
Okay.
a detailed fact base for the
Great.
public to have access to.
Okay.
We tried to pick some of this more interesting insights out today rather than a straight data readout.
Got it. No, thank you. It was very, very detailed, very informative. Any questions for John of the team? None. Okay. Well, you guys did such a great job that, we look forward to reading all the details. Thank you very much. We're now going to move over to Lou.
Yes, thank you. The New York City Transit procurement package includes one action item this month. This item is a modification of a competitively negotiated purchase contract with New Flyer of America. The change covered by this modification is for an extension to the delivery schedule to allow New Flyer time, as required by New York City Transit, to develop, test, and install an early warning detection system for thermal events on each bus prior to delivery. In July 2022, New York City Transit Department of Buses met with New Flyer to discuss the need for an early warning detection system on all 60 of the electric buses to be delivered under this contract. It should be noted that no such system was commercially available at the time of award from any all-electric bus manufacturer in the United States. The parties agreed that such a system was necessary and needed to be developed immediately. New Flyer agreed to develop the new system and retrofit all 60 of the buses at no cost. Given the safety-sensitive nature of the new system, the Department of Buses determined that it would not take delivery of the buses until such time that the buses could be delivered with the early warning detection system equipped. At the conclusion of negotiations, it was agreed the following was agreed. The delivery schedule would be pushed out and elongated per New York City Transit's direction. New York City Transit would compensate New Flyer for cost increases associated with the schedule adjustment, and New Flyer would develop the required early warning detection system and install it on all buses prior to delivery at no additional cost to New York City Transit. Delivery of the production buses is now scheduled to begin in March 2024 and be completed by September 2024. The final agreed-upon price for this modification is $4.8 million, and I submit this procurement for board approval.
Thank you, Lou. Any questions from the committee? Sharif?
Thank you, Lou. A quick question. Is this a custom system that's just being built for us, or is it widely available out there on the market?
There's really, Frank, nothing available immediately. It's something that's being developed, but I don't know that it.
So
Sorry.
there was no such system available, so we insisted that they develop it, even at the expense of delaying the delivery of the buses. Hence, that's what the $4 million is. Is it the delay in production, not for the cost of the system? So now that the system is being developed by New Flyer, it will be available throughout all of their buses and other bus systems. Other bus manufacturers are also looking at this now.
Thank you for that. And, is this the type of thing where, how long in advance, I mean, when you get a warning that something is going to happen, obviously you take the bus out of service. The battery, I guess, the actual batteries, are they under warranty? How do we get compensated and make sure that if there's a defective sort of product, that we have safeguards in this contract?
So what this system will do is very early identify there's an anomaly within each battery, which so immediately, like you said, if the bus is in service, we would take it out of service. But it's detecting it so early that we would immediately bring the bus manufacturer in and it would be covered under warranty, essentially, and they would look at it. So it's getting way ahead of things rather than waiting till, some sort of failure.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, do I have a motion to accept, to approve this procurement? So second. Sharif, all those in favor? Aye. Against? Motion carried. Thank you, Lou. Anything else? Or can we adjourn? All right, motion to adjourn? Motion. Okay, second. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.